Hi, I'm Tim, he's Mike, and welcome to Around the Crown, a Watchbox forum for the discussion of topics in Rolex. Question, Rolex lovers. Have you heard enough about the prices of Paul Newman Daytona's 6062 star dials and Big Crown Explorer dial Submariners? You have heard enough. Good. This is the thing. Everyone wishes he bought a race-ragged Shelby Cobra in 1967, Apple in 1995, Bitcoin in 2009. Those ships have sailed. Likewise, in the world of Rolex, discussion of collectibles often pertains exclusively to pre-1980 or even pre-1990 watches. Basically, you're paying for past discoveries. Here's the thing. New classics are emerging, we're picking future collectibles, and we're updating the record. Today, we're discussing our favorite prospects for, let's say, 20 years hence. Mike, what are your favorites?
Well, first of all, it's great to be back here with you. I love doing this with you because it's so much fun to try to look forward because the Rolex collection is so broad and we get new pieces every year. But some of mine are very recent ones. And the first one I'd love to talk about is the 228-235, the Eisenkiesel from 2021. It was kind of launched under the radar. When the launch came, nobody really saw it on the website. You really had to dig to find it. And then everybody was like, what is an Eisenkiesel?
Well, stone pebbles, for those of you who speak German, we know, we're aware, but it's a stone dial.
It's a stone dial. And you know, traditionally, we've seen onyx, we've seen lapis, we saw malachite. This is the first time we've seen this stone. So to me, it's historically important. It's the first time we've seen a stone dial in 40 millimeters. Traditionally, it was always in the 36 or smaller sizes. So based on rarity, based on a new stone, based on a new size, and based on they're not shipping a lot of product, I think long term it's one of those things we're going to look back on, whether they do it for a short run, which I think they might. So I think one of those could be a really great collectible.
Two things we need to know about this. There are options. You can get it in 36, you can get it in 40. Which do you think is going to be the favorite, again, 20 years from now, not today's market, because in today's market it's probably the 40.
It's definitely the 40 in today's market, but it's a great point because they both have diamonds, and obviously diamonds limit it for some men. I mean, not everybody wants to wear a diamond Rolex. 36s is your traditional day-date size, so it could go to the 36, but today's market, I think 40, I'll probably say 40 just because it's never been done before.
Fair enough. Now, there are two different bezels. You can get full brilliant diamonds or you can get it fluted. Is the diamond bezel just handicapped?
Completely. I mean, it just limits the market completely, I think. I mean, I could see it being a very hip woman's watch in the 40 diamond bezel, but the diamond bezel to me is too much and takes away from the stone dial.
Do we wind up in a situation where 20 years from now, so few people in our era decided they wanted 36 millimeters with a diamond bezel that the market demands exactly that in 20 years?
It certainly happened historically. So yes, the rarest or the worst sellers historically have always become the most collectible. So you could absolutely be right on that.
Okay. What we love, the future may hate, and vice versa. Okay, Mike, stone dial, strong start. What else have you got for me?
So my favorite complication, and my daily wearer, is a GMT. I love white gold GMTs. And particularly the new version Meteorite dial, I think is an amazing piece. I think their new meteorites are incredible. We've started to see meteorites come back in Daytona last year, which kind of took a little of the attention away from the GMT, which up to that point was really the only current production meteorite, minus one day date here and there. But that GMT Sport with the Meteorite dial, I think is just an incredible piece long term.
Now this is kind of like the 1987 Buick GNX of modern Rolex. Like that car was launched, it was a limited edition, it was the last of its kind. People put them straight into climate control. They knew it was marked for greatness from the beginning. Is this watch too discovered to really emerge as a collectible?
I think it was becoming too discovered, but then all the attention is focused to Daytona. So then now people are kind of, I believe, taking their eye off the ball on this piece. And it's only been a 2-year run, so it's not a long-term piece. I think eventually they'll, again, discontinue it, and it's not so popular that I think long-term it's a great collectible.
So right now, retail on this is $41,600. What kind of market adjustment are we already seeing on it?
We're seeing them trade about $20,000 over retail. But like I keep bringing up the Daytona, but the Daytona is selling 100,000 over retail. It's incredible.
Hundreds of percent.
Exactly.
So this one does have some headroom. Maybe not something that's going to make you a lot of money over 5 years, but if you hang on to it, you're going to have something very special in 2 decades.
I also love the fact that, again, I don't always look at it from a money standpoint, but I look at it like when I put that watch on, I love the feel, and every dial is unique. It's not like a traditional black or blue dial. It's unique, it's yours, it's special, it's one I would own and keep.
Yeah, they do create unique dials. Each one has a oxidized and stabilized Widmanstätten pattern on it, and because the dial is made of iron, no structures are ever identical. The crystalline structure is unique to each example.
Correct. And I think I love that it kind of becomes mine when I find that one. That is going to be hopefully my next big Rolex I get is going to be that one.
And we know from the Daytonas that Rolex tends to keep the Meteorite fairly scarce. It is not something they're ever going to be producing in response to demand.
Correct. They could sell many, many more of any meteorites, but like the stone dials, they keep them very tight, and it's always done well because of that.
Okay, so what's on the bottom step of the podium? What do you have as your third selection?
So my third selection is a watch that I never really loved when it first came out, but it's the Milgauss Z-Blue. Now, traditional Milgauss, the early Milgausses I always loved. I thought it was a cool tool watch. And then it came trendy, and then the green crystal I always thought was murky and weird. And green and blue, it's really an odd watch, but kind of cool. And I just think we're going to look back 20 years and go, what is that? It's just so unusual for Rolex. It's a cool price range still where you can actually afford to buy it and put it away. And I just think it's incredibly distinctive.
And for the record, this is my favorite modern Rolex, so I'm with you on that.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be the first Rolex I buy. Unless like a crazy like lapis dial Day-Date Oyster Quartz shows up. But, okay, that's
Barring
more.
that.
Yeah, that's not modern. That's like 30 years old. I'm talking the modern era, 21st century. The only challenge is it does seem like this is a crowded pack, as Rolex has produced a lot of interesting and colorful 39 to 40 millimeter three-hand watches in the last 2 decades.
Correct, but it's the first one I can think of with a colored crystal, and really the only place they've not extended it to other variations. So I think from that standpoint, it puts it in a very distinctive category, and you know across the room it's a Milgauss with that green crystal.
Does it have to fight for attention and ultimately interest with something like the discontinued white dial?
Interestingly enough, I think it probably does. But I think once the green came out, the white kind of fell off the radar, and I spent a lot of time with the white. It used to be my wife's daily watch that she loved. So I love that white, very clean, but it's a very different, distinctive look. And I think long-term, we'll look back and say that was an unusual piece. Yes, it was around for a number of years, but it was never the most popular. I think we'll love to see that in 20 years.
So if you're going to buy a watch for the safe in 20 years. We always say don't think about money, but sometimes money reflects interest. You got a choice between the 39 millimeter red grape Oyster Perpetual, short production run, discontinued, and now very sought. You've got the Z-Blue and the white dial Milgauss. Which one do you think takes the cake? Not just in terms of your interest, but what do you think Rolex collectors are going to be interested in?
I think Rolex collectors will still go to the Z-Blue only because Milgauss, in my head, is an iconic pillar of Rolex. Whereas the grape was a cool dial, but it was on a reference that's not really iconic. It's a separate family, the Milgauss. It has a specific purpose. I think it has a place long-term in history.
Okay. Now, there is one other competitor for the Milgauss in the current collection, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. Mike, what's your fourth pick?
So my fourth pick is the Air King. And the new variation, the 116-900, just because, again, the dial is so unusual. It's a traditional Rolex family. I know many have made the argument that it doesn't really fit in the Air King family. And it's been very, I would say, not popular with a lot of people. It really polarizes the market, which to me, long-term, tells me it'll be something of interest.
Yeah, it's a difficult watch to place because a lot of folks can't decide, and it is a three-hand watch, it is an Explorer dial, but it's also dimensionally and technically identical to the Milgauss, right down to the inner cage and the movement. Is it a deluxe Explorer, or is it a junior Milgauss?
I would think it's more of a deluxe Explorer, especially now that they made Explorer 36. It really, to me, would have been a better Explorer version than an Air King. But again, we're not in the naming department. They fit the family together. I think there'll always be an Air King, like there'll always be an Explorer, there'll always be a Milgauss. But I don't think that one will be in the collection much longer.
The strange thing is that the Air King doesn't have any specific link to aviation in its design or its complication. There's nothing to cue you into the intent of airfaring when you look at an Air King, a 34 millimeter Air King. But when you look at the 40 millimeter Air King, you have the instrumentation of the Bloodhound supersonic car, and the intent was that this would be a sort of ground-bound jet. So maybe this is the first Air King that really does have a tie to the world of aerospace.
I think that's a great point, because you're right. The dial is distinctive. It is a gauge of sorts, which is why I've loved it from the beginning. But again, not terribly popular and just an outlier in the collection that will go away. Long term, I think it's a safe bet.
Guys, keep us streaming, but look up Bloodhound SSC if you want to see where the current Air King dial came from. All right, well, that's your 4, Mike. I'm excited to see where this goes. And by the way, if both of us are alive in 20 years, you can definitely call us on all our errors today.
I think definitely a solid bet for you. Me, we're not too sure.
Older and richer, Mike, older and richer. All right. So for me, it's got to be the Rolex Cellini Prince, launched in 2005, discontinued after 2014. So many milestones. The first modern Prince, it was discontinued decades ago before being revived as a Cellini. The first series production display case-back Rolex. A modern-day Rolex watch with a manual wind movement. The first time ever that a Rolex dial was coordinated with the style of a displayable movement, and each model of the 4 available, 2 in white gold, 1 in rose, 1 in yellow, the dial and the movement design mirrored each other, and I don't know what to say.
I remember when they first launched it, we were beyond excited because, again, historic model, historic reference. A Prince was always the doctor's watch. It was iconic in Rolex. And to have it coming back, again, was impressive. To have manual wind back then, a great tank, everything about it was perfect, and then they went over and above in so many ways, and it still managed to flop, which is just unbelievable to me, because when you point out the details, being it the dial, each case is distinctive, each dial is distinctive, each movement is distinctive, and it's see-through, and the quality and the finish is incredible, and then to not figure out why people are not following this watch.
And it baffles me because even today, when everything's going nuts and people seem more aware than ever of rarity in the world of Rolex, you look at what the Cellini Prince cost in 2014, about $15,500 for yellow gold, $17,000 for rose and white. And today you see these watches trading anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000, in spite of the fact that everyone knows how important it is. A man can wear it, a woman can wear it. It suits the size preferences of both East and West. You'd think it would have a huge audience. All of that, it's a chronometer, it's a 3-day power reserve. Technically, it's an interesting watch. It's not just the aesthetics. I think the rarity and the importance of this watch will be in its favor down the line, and I think people will want it first because it's cool, and second, for the same reason most folks want Rolex 20 years later. They wish they'd been on the bandwagon earlier. So I think that's a very cool, underrated piece, and still a great buy.
Now, a question for you. Of the 4 variations, which one's your favorite?
Yellow gold.
Interesting.
I'm not a yellow gold guy, but with that watch, because of the vintage style, because of the specific design, the pyramid of the dial and the movement of the yellow gold, I think it looks the most unique and spectacular, and I think it's a thing out of its time. It comes from another age, so it wears colored gold better. It is not of our all white metal watch era, so I like that. I would also say, realistically, this is going to be controversial, but I adore the white gold platinum Yacht-Master II. And, what? Hang on. Sometimes the ugliest Rolex becomes the most collectible. Remember, back in the 1980s, the manual wind Daytona, oh God, it's such a,
horrible watch.
Turn up your nose, wince. Ugly. And today people are like, oh, they're just so divine, they're beautiful, oh my, precious, gorgeous. You don't get style like that anymore. I'm like, come on. You couldn't give these away on a shovel with a pot of gold. So now you can lay into it.
I think the fact that they felt the need to write it across the bezel always threw me a little. I do love precious metals. I love the weight. I like big watches, so that part of it. But it was just one of those watches that, to me, I don't know that I'd ever have used the function, and don't know that I ever could if I had to in a pinch. And it was just so big and over the top with the writing and everything about it. And then white gold, and super expensive because it was a very complicated movement for Rolex.
Yes.
So yeah, that was one that never sold well. Still to this day doesn't sell well. Probably one of the best values in precious metal Rolex today.
Now think about this. Right now, this is a watch that retails for $48,150. Go on Chrono24 right now. You're going to find this model, the white gold model, available for between, I would say, about $35,000 and $37,000 in its original iterations. Now, there was a change to the dial in 2013. The hands, which were previously polished metal, became blued. They changed again in 2017 when we gained the Mercedes hands, once again polished metal. But in the era of the steel Yacht-Master II, no one bought the white gold watch. So you partition it into 3 different eras of dial, and then the final one, the rarest of them all, because in this era, everyone gets the steel watch if he wants a white metal. It's really special. It's all grayscale. There's very little color on the watch. When it first came out in 2007, the yellow gold, well, the yellow gold had white, it had blue, it had red, it had yellow gold. People looked at that dial and they said, this is the Clown Master, which is a little bit harsh, but no one's ever said that about the white gold model. Now you take, I'm sorry to say.
They might say it's the boat anchor, but not the Clown Master.
Now you imagine it pedaling around on a unicycle. But my point is that this is the coolest version of the most complicated ever Rolex watch. And given how few have been made post-2017, it's almost certainly hundreds, not thousands per year. This is a very special watch, and the least gaudy because the bezel has Yacht-Master in platinum, and the calibrations in platinum,
Correct.
and the base in platinum. It's not that blue with polish that you get on the other
No,
models.
it doesn't scream as much, but it is definitely an oddball piece.
Basically, this is a watch that was so ugly it became rare, and was so rare it will become desirable. Okay, next we have the Sky Dweller 326939, which was a 1-year 2017 dial. Now, of course, there was a change to the dial in 2017. The steel gold model arrived. That's the one everyone wanted. There was an almost identical set of precious metal, full white gold Sky Dwellers that year, full bracelet. They looked just like the steel watch. And because of this, Rolex only made them with the updated, fully loomed 2017 dial for 1 year. Discontinued, very expensive when new. No one wanted this over a watch that was about 1/3 the price in steel. There are so few of them, it's hard to even find a picture. But I think this is a great prospect for the future. It's a useful watch.
It's an incredible prospect for the future. One, again, I'm back to precious metals. I love the weight. That blue dial really is a unicorn. Most people don't even know it existed because everybody was focused on the steel. The steel was collectible. The white sat when they did make them, and they produced very, very few because the jewelers weren't asking for them and they didn't want to stock them. It's an incredible pick. It's so under the radar that 99% of Rolex experts aren't going to know that watch is even around. I think that's an incredible pick.
And again, it's a very practical watch. GMT, chronometer, 100 meters water resistant, full bracelet. You've got an annual calendar built in.
Right?
And again, it's the 2017 dial, so it's fully loomed, no longer just the hands. So this is a very special watch, and one that you're just as likely to wear as put in the safe because it is so practical. It's a 42, it's big, but it's not overkill. No one would ever consider it a Leviathan, like something like a Deep Sea or a Yacht-Master II. All right, one more 1-year precious metal watch from Rolex. It seems like I'm picking a lot of these. We have the 2018 blue dial, white gold GMT-Master II Pepsi. Mike, this is a crazy watch because there are 2 different versions of this. There's the one that was born with the blue dial, and then there's the one that was swapped to the blue dial because Rolex had been building a white gold Pepsi since 2014. They didn't want to alienate all the folks who had paid big to get this watch in white gold before it came out in 2018 in steel. So they came up with a solution, put a blue dial on it. Now they made this for 1 year before they rolled over to the next reference, which was the 126719 BLRO, meaning you've got a 1-year GMT-Master II Pepsi with a blue dial, and I'm sorry to say, I can't think of any way to definitively tell a swap dial from a born with, unless you have warranty papers from pre-2018, then you know it was born with a black dial.
Correct.
The problem here is that you could get them swapped for a period of time after 2018, and as far as I know, swaps were still ongoing as of 2021, so it continues. In some markets, it will say blue on the warranty card if the watch was born with the blue dial. The problem is not every market lists the dial color on the warranty card. This differs from market to market, and I've heard rumors, several different independent sources have told me that people have gotten updated warranty cards after having the dial swapped. So can I think of any definitive way to know the watch was born with a blue dial? No. All I can say is that if you've got a Rolex factory blue dial on a 116719 BLRO, you've got a real collectible. Born with or swapped, this is a rare watch.
Very rare watch. And the market does pay a premium for a card that says blue, one way or another, however it got there. There is definitely demand for that. But it's so rare to see them with the card printed blue.
And I think there are going to be two different types. They're going to be the kinds that are documented swaps, and I think the market's going to pay a premium for those because they're documented. And I think there are going to be those that have the card that says blue on it because, fairly or not, people think that means it's a born with blue
Correct.
dial. I think the greatest challenge is if you've got something that was retailed in 2018 in an international market that has neither a blue labeled card nor a documented swap. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Correct. But it's either way, it's an amazing watch to wear.
Okay, mea culpa. I'll admit that all too often my own speculation on the future of Rolex collectibles is driven by my perception of what other people think will be worth a lot of money. Mike, can we agree that the reason to buy a Rolex watch is because you love it?
You have to love it. You have to wear it. You have to, that's the beauty of them, is you can wear it, you can enjoy it, you can live in it. And in 20 years, you may have something that's super rare and collectible, but you got 20 years worth of daily enjoyment out of it. You don't have to baby these things. They don't belong in the safe. They really belong on your wrist, showing every day.
You know, it's easy to predict the future, well, when no one's calling you on it. But in hindsight, I think the real value of all the watches we discussed today, if you do buy one of them, or just buy your dream Rolex, the value in 20 years is going to be the accumulated memories and good times you've had with that watch on your wrist.
That's the best part of it all.
And that's our lap around the crown.